Greetings, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and I shall be continuing my series about the Third Reich for A-level history. That's Nazi Germany. So the question I'm going to assess today is what impact the Second World War had on Nazi popularity. Usually when war is declared, people rally to the government. Opinion polls these days would show there'd be a big uptick in support for the incumbent when that were to happen. Now, the Third Reich is very different. Obviously, no opinion polls were there at the time. It would jeopardize one's safety to express any dissent. However, anecdotally, we know that the German response to the outbreak of war was subdued. That's by the public. Hitler sent some soldiers stomping around Berlin to drum up enthusiasm, and really it fell flat. So we know 3rd of September 1939, the war was on, as in France and the United Kingdom had declared war. On the 1st of September, when Poland had invaded, many Germans thought it might just be them and Poland. Well, Hitler also miscalculated, assumed the UK and France would declare war. So they're very recent memories of the First World War that had ended only 21 years earlier. 2 million German soldiers had been killed in that war. Hundreds of thousands of civilians had died, mostly through malnutrition. So people were aware that war was not a sport. This was not going to be enjoyable. However, as their successes against Poland mounted, the public seemed to be relieved. The people were vainly hoping the war would come to a close quite soon. Then there was the war in the West, starting the 10th of May, 1940. All right, Denmark and Norway had been invaded the month before, and there was a fairly easy victory there, including against French and British forces supporting the Norwegians. Then France surrendered, and that 22nd of January, that was complete. There'd been some wobbling about the 18th of January, and there was a huge public outburst of delight. We have to use these unscientific methods. No one could even take a straw poll, but from what the Gestapo noticed people's private conversations and just the reaction on the streets, the streets of Berlin being thronged with hundreds of thousands of revelers, it was patent that most people were elated. Hitler triumphed beyond anybody's wildest dreams. He conquered the traditional enemy in 6 weeks. The most optimistic scenario for the First World War had been that Germany could knock France out 6 weeks before turning her attentions to Russia. And the Kaiser in the Netherlands could not contain his admiration for Hitler, even he was stunned by the magnitude and the swiftness of the victory. Hitler himself said, once France threw in the towel, "If 1 year ago someone had told me that by now my armies would be standing from Norway to Spain, I would have pronounced him insane." Even he was flabbergasted about what had happened, because obviously they were occupying Norway, and their troops had got all the way down the Atlantic coast of France to the Spanish frontier. So many people were overjoyed. They thought the British would see sense and parley, but the British did not take terms, did not seek terms. It seemed that the war was unwinnable for the United Kingdom. The UK had a few dominions on its side: Canada, Australia, South Africa, and so forth. But these were not very industrialised countries. Canada and Australia could produce enough arms themselves, but most of the colonies were reliant on weapons productions from the United Kingdom. And there's no way that British arms manufacturing could keep pace with Germany, especially as she had subjugated some other industrialised countries such as France. So Nazi propaganda was suggesting that Churchill was a Jewish puppet, and this warmongering, bloodthirsty, plutocratic clique was keeping the war going for its own profit. So Hitler gave a speech at the Odeonplatz, my last appeal to reason, as he called it, and he called upon the British to sue for peace. He said, "If this war continues, I solemnly prophesy that one great world power will be destroyed. Mr. Churchill may think it will be Germany, but I know it shall be England." And there was the most thunderous applause. So he could deliver his lines with such a cadence as to impel people to applaud at just the right moment. So Hitler was cognizant of food shortages causing a serious dip in public morale during the First World War. So he took care to make sure that there were adequate supplies of food and indeed consumer goods. However, as we shall see, this became increasingly difficult to sustain as the war dragged on. He didn't want a protracted war. It was easy enough until 1941, the invasion of the Soviet Union, but after 1943 the situation became as bad as in the First World War. That's why Goebbels gave a speech calling for a total war in 1943, which was telling them that you're going to have to tighten your belt. The German economy was extraordinarily impressive in terms of the amount they produced, the efficiency towards the end of the war. They weren't totally committed to the war in terms of their spending. The British spent a much higher proportion of their national income on the war right from the beginning. And the Soviets, when they're involved, likewise. So it was a minor miracle that the German war economy kept going as long as it did, and that was